I want to take the call on this bill to express my disgust and disappointment with the government. I felt sick tonight sitting here in the House listening to some of the comments from the other side, especially from the ACT member David Garrett. And wouldn't it be good to be standing here tonight talking about legislation that's actually going to make things better, not worse for New Zealanders? I'm proud of our ACC system. It's not broke. It has $11 billion in reserve. And instead, we've had spurious attacks, countless spurious attacks on its robustness and its credibility in the name, ultimately, of privatisation. New Zealanders are going to get less cover and pay more, and it's unfair, and you've heard tonight countless times from this side of the House how inhumane and lacking in compassion it is. We've heard lots of passion from the other side of the House, but no compassion. It's unfair for the vast numbers of New Zealanders. And it's and the thing is...
Point of order. Point of order, the Honourable Darren.
I'm sorry to interrupt my colleague during her speech, but the ACT member, despite his closeness to the Minister of Justice, shouldn't be moved to the National Party front bench to interject on my colleague when he belongs a bit further back in the scheme of things.
Well, look, that's a fair point, and I think the member, by shifting his seat with his drink, has taken that on board. I think. Claire Curran.
Mr. Chair.
Do it over there.
I'm talking tonight about the vast numbers of New Zealanders who are going to be disadvantaged by this legislation, cruel, inhumane legislation that lacks in compassion, and is hostile to decent people who expect more from their government. And as you've heard countless times from this side of the House, this bill will make our AC system worse, not better. It's going to shift more of the costs of being injured to the injured person and the state, eroding the protection of New Zealanders who are injured at work, despite the costs of ACC to employers already being substantially lower than those paid by Australian employers, which you've just heard my colleague Chris Hipkins talk about. The case for cuts to entitlements isn't made out, and the Labor side of this House believes that the recent increase in the liabilities of ACC are being used by the government as an excuse for unjustified cuts to the ACC scheme and ultimately to privatise it. So most costs saved by ACC won't go away. They're going to be passed on to the health system, the injured and their families and other state agencies. And I'd just like to reflect on something that I heard my fellow Dunedin MP, list member for Dunedin, Michael Woodhouse, talking about authoritatively as an accountant. And I have to say, that I'm very disappointed in hearing what he has to say tonight, and ultimately want to say to him that he is going to be accountable on this. In Dunedin particularly, there are countless New Zealanders who have relied on ACC to re-enter the workforce. It's part of the fabric of our society, and it works, and this government is eroding and destroying it. And Michael Woodhouse, who is a new member, as I am in this House, will be accountable on this. And I wonder how many of the Dunedin constituents who might be listening tonight at 10 to 10 at night, who are listening to this debate and wondering what on earth is happening to this country, waterside workers, railway workers, labourers, people who do hard manual labour and who have accidents and who are the backbone of the New Zealand workforce. I wonder what they're thinking tonight when they're listening to this debate. So, Mr. Chair, I just want to address part one and talk about the issue around being deemed ready to work at 30 rather than 35 hours a week. And the Labor members don't believe that this is justified. Most full-time workers work more than 35 hours a week, and most need income based on those hours to meet their living costs. And deeming an injured person vocationally independent when they're physically able to work 30 hours a week, which could trigger an end to earnings-related compensation, rather than 35 hours a week, is unfair and will cause hardship to more injured people. The current rules, as the Labor Party Minority Report says, the current rules... Mr Chair.
I'm sorry, the calls have expired. There was an agreement, so... I understand there's an agreement. If there's no formal agreement, then I'll invite the member to continue. All right, clear, Karen.
Thank you, Mr Chair. The current rules are strict. Deeming somebody ready for work doesn't mean that they can get a job. And there's been a study, as the Minority Report by Labor referred to, by Hazel Armstrong, published in the New Zealand Law Review, that showed that under the current rules only 32% of the long-term injured deemed work-ready were in full-time work, 21% were in part-time work, 22.5% on a work and income New Zealand benefit, 10% were not working and not on a benefit, and 9% remained on a weekly compensation. And the author Hazel Armstrong said that those figures demonstrated a point that high exit rates are not the same as high return to work rates, which has implications for the state because many workers put through the process do not return to work but are simply shifted from weekly compensation to work and income benefits. So the change to make this rule even tougher will reduce employer levies that are already lower than overseas, but will do so at the cost of both the injured person and the state. And you've heard countless examples of this tonight, that this bill is going to make things harder and it's going to leave the vast majority of New Zealanders worse off, not better. And as I said at the beginning, this is very disappointing, and I've listened tonight to the debate from the other side of the House with some disgust.